So the title of this is Scairdy Cat. It's about my family. I was 8 years old when it happened, asleep in my basement bedroom. In the middle of the night, I rolled over and saw a flash of light. I thought it was lightning. I looked toward my window, one of those small ones high on the wall. In Chicago, they're called Garden View. In Pilot Knob, Missouri, they're called basement windows. And I saw that it wasn't lightning, it was a beam of light. Someone was crouched outside my window, pointing a flashlight into my room. The beam slowly traveled the wall, coming toward me, and I scrambled out of bed, knowing that whoever that was, I didn't want them to see me. I hit the floor, and the circle of light hit the center of my mattress, right where I'd been less than a second before. My heart was beating fast, I was confused, I was scared, my mind was spinning. I was 8 years old. I ducked as the beam of light went over my head and across my nightstand. I stared, trying to see beyond the light, but could only make out his shape. He was big. Then the flashlight went off. In the moonlight, I saw the man stand. I watched as he lifted one foot, swung it back, and kicked the glass. It didn't break, so he brought his foot back again. He was trying to break in. Someone was breaking into my house. I unwedged my body and I frantically scooted backwards, slipping out of my room, quickly crawling beneath the laundry table, making my way to the stairs. I ran, screaming for my mom, for my brothers and sisters, but the house was silent. I flipped on the kitchen light and I ran to the phone. A list of numbers hung next to it, and although I wasn't tall enough to see the majority of the names, the number on the bottom was all I needed. Fred. Fred lived across the street in a small apartment above the gas station. I hit the digits quickly, hard. He answered, his voice thick with sleep, and I told him everything. It sounded like some kind of scary movie. Then I hung up. I ran to the living room and I hid behind the drapes. I kept my eyes pointed across the street, locked on Fred's door. Come on, come on, come on, I whispered. Finally, he emerged. His hair was pushed to one side, he was shirtless and hadn't taken the time to zip up his pants. I ran from my hiding spot. By the time I threw open the door, Fred was on the porch, holding a gun. I'd never seen a handgun in real life. In Pilot Knob, we had BB guns, we had .22s, we had pellet guns, but not handguns. Seeing it made everything very real to me. See, everything that I had told Fred, everything that I just told you, I lied. I'm sorry, I didn't want to lie to you, but I want you to understand how scared I was. This is what really happened. My mom worked 2 jobs. Days waitressing at Mimosa Restaurant and nights at Brown Shoe Factory. While my mom was at the factory, she thought her kids were safe and sound at home, the older ones babysitting the younger. But come on, 9 kids with no one to answer to? 9 kids? Within minutes of my mother driving off, the house was full of activity. Television on in the living room, radios blaring both upstairs and down, people calling dibs on the phone. You see, while my mom worked, the Jones household was governed by the strict rule of, you don't tell on me, I won't tell on you. And while I very much honored this rule and would never dream of tattling on my brothers and sisters, it was a bit unfair. After all, my big sin as an 8-year-old was staying up past my bedtime. But my siblings, they were leaving the house. They were going out into the world to smooch on boyfriends and girlfriends, to play video games at Carlene's Fantasy World. They were going out rabble-rousing, whatever that was. Even Eddie, who was only a year older than me, was going out to steal redeemable soda bottles from back porches. So while there was no way on God's green earth that I would ever tattle on one of my brothers or sisters, it was also important that I be duly compensated for my allegiance. And this is where the little future auditor in me kicked in. I kept a mental checklist of what every sibling owed me in exchange for my silence. Ellen, my oldest sister, owed me 1 pitcher of Kool-Aid chilling in the refrigerator. I know, it's weak, but it was a strategic move on my part. As the oldest, Ellen was often left in charge. Lester had to take over my usual chore for 1 week, taking out the trash. I hated taking out the trash. Jason owed me 1 Hot Wheels car, preferably with doors or a hood that opened. With Jesse, I got Trumpability on anything he was watching on television, which meant even during American Bandstand, I could change that channel. Fanny let me have all her change in her purse, but it had to be at least $1.27, enough to buy $1 worth of candy, a 25-cent Pepsi, and have 2 cents for tax. Dee Dee promised to play at least 2 board games with me anytime I wanted, and Drain, I can't really remember what Drain was supposed to give me, and that left Eddie. Eddie was hard to negotiate with. It came down to this. I promised not to tattle on him, and he promised not to punch me in the face. Now, everything was just going as expected on that particular night until I went upstairs. Fanny, Dee Dee, and Drain were picking out different outfits, saying things like, yeah, you should wear that, or no, that's ugly. And I could tell they were planning something much bigger than usual. Gina's having an all-night skate party, Fanny said. Yeah, it's her birthday, Dee Dee added. All night? Well, this was going to cost him more than $1.27, 2 games of checkers, and whatever Drain usually gave me. And I was about to mention just that when they totally floored me. Look, Drain said, we got you something. And from beneath her bed, she brought out a black plastic suitcase. And I knew exactly what it was. This was the newest technology of the land, the one thing coveted by all society and rented out from such upscale places as Casey's General Store and Kroger's customer service desk. This was a VCR. And they'd even rented me a movie, a scary movie. I loved to be scared. My heart would beat, goosebumps would appear on my arm, joyful anxiety would swell in my chest as I waited for the monsters to rise from the lake or killers to jump from the shadows. Now, I typically enjoy the real blood and guts stuff, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the movie they got me, well, it fell into the this could really happen category. The title was When a Stranger Calls. And it's about this babysitter who has put the kids to bed for the night, and then the phone rings, and this creepy voice asks, have you checked the children? And at first she thinks it's some kind of prank, but the calls keep coming and she gets really scared, calling the cops and everything. But the phone keeps ringing, have you checked the children? Then when she's about bonkers with fear, she sees that the children are missing. And we find out that the call is coming from inside the house. I lost my shit. The fucking call was coming from inside the house. And that creepy voice in the movie, have you checked the children? Have I checked the children? I was the children. And I was completely alone in a house that had a zillion dark corners to hide in. So my fear took over. And I called Fred. And I lied. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Tell him that I was scared? That I just didn't want to be alone? That I was a scaredy cat? Heck no. But in that moment, when I saw the gun, that's when movie-generated fear was replaced by real fear. I realized what I'd done. By calling Fred over, I had broken the Jones household rule. You don't tell on me, I won't tell on you. Where is everybody? Fred asked. Another thing I didn't tell you. Fred wasn't just the neighbor. For one hot minute a few years earlier, Fred had also been my stepfather. Just long enough for my mom to figure out that he'd never leave his first true love, the bottle. So of course he would notice that the house was empty. Better call your mom, he said. Well, I began to cry. I had just tattled on all 8 of my siblings collectively. My rapid heartbeat returned. How was I going to get out of this? Why had I lied? Fred was on the phone with my mom. All my brothers and sisters were about to get into trouble, and it was all my fault. My throat began to close up. I was frantic. A panic attack was coming on. I was on the verge of a full-blown nervous breakdown. So I passed out. I just lost consciousness. You awake? I woke up the next morning to Eddie's voice, and in a split second, my fear revved up. Hey, you awake? I feigned sleep, and I imagined him standing over me with his fist clenched, ready to deliver the ultimate punch to my face as soon as I opened my eyes. And then I thought, this would just be the start of it. I'd have to give back all the Hot Wheels. Dee Dee would never play another board game with me. I'd have to take out the trash forever. But worst and most immediate of all, Eddie was going to punch me. They were probably all going to punch me. Jason with his knuckle punch atop the head, Jesse with his chest beat punches as he pinned me to the ground, Fanny with her weird under-the-elbow fling of a punch. I don't even know what that was. We're all grounded except for you. I couldn't take it anymore. I quickly rolled over and trying to escape his reach, I pushed up against the wall. Wow, you're really scared, huh? This is it. This is where he clocks me a good one. I cringed, waiting for it to come, but then noticed Eddie didn't look mad. How big was he? What? That guy who tried to break in, were you scared? Eddie believed the lie. This was it. This was my way out. They couldn't be mad at me if someone had actually tried to break in. And I bet my older brothers and sisters felt absolutely terrible. After all, they left me alone while some madman was roaming the streets of Pilot Knob. This was perfect. Yeah, I said. I've never been more scared in my whole life. Thank you.
Mr. Darwyn Jones.